20 pesos. I can pay you. Victim number 7. El Tajín, Mexico, May 10th, 2014, 2:47 and 19 seconds p.m. But when he looks through the downpour, the women lift their heads. The bus is always late, senor, but it always comes. Is that how he'll get to Papantla? He offers a slow dip of his hat, and though he stares directly at them, he sees none of them. Not one of them exists beyond the weight of a breath, and a breath Isandorno grants no mystery. The women are as unimportant as guns. And yet someone continues to laugh. It is the old Indian across the road. He has set up a stand where the bus will stop. There he will sell what he makes to those who pass by. Since Isandorno left the ruins to wait here, no one has passed by. The old Indian was asleep. Now, though that he is awake, the old Indian can't stop looking at Isandorno, and he won't stop laughing. Do not take him seriously, the women mutter. Then they clap their hands and shake their heads and curse his madness. He is always like that. He laughs at everybody. He is a fool. But Isandorno still walks out into the rain to find out about the laughter. Then halfway across the road, Isandorno hears something else. It makes no difference that the old Indian has gotten louder. It makes no difference that someone else is with him and laughs too. Even the crashing rain will not drown out this sound. Something dying, something crying for help. Beyond hope, beyond help. Isandorno could answer it with the quick heel of his boot, quick enough to prohibit a question of purpose. But the sound was hard to locate. It was not back by the old woman. It was not over by the old Indian. Isandorno had to squat to listen more carefully. He narrowed his eyes to stop his eyes and see the sound. He found it again somewhere along the middle of the road. However, when his eyes unnarrowed, his ears lost the direction, and only the road remained, offering up a high harvest of rain. The disappearance was about as absurd as crouching like this on a blacktop between Poza Rica and Papantla while water seeped into his boots. The disappearance was about as absurd as beholding the sudden appearance of a goat and a donkey. For an instant, Isandorno even expected to see such a pair emerge from the rain, and then the cry, or whatever it had been, was gone, and Isandorno stood up and continued on. Why, in the first place, Isandorno had stopped at the ruins earlier that morning was because the bus he had chosen to take him to Veracruz was a tourist bus, and he had time. The tour guide, dark as rotten banana skins and round as a grave mound, had recited a history all the way there. He was not a tour guide. He was a minister who, by some accident, had become a tour guide. He believed everything he said. He only wanted converts. Why cacao, or pulque, or takehil suhut?
From Nahuatl, meaning a place or crows.
Should not require converts was not clear. The guide spoke about ulama too, what in Nahuatl is called olamatizli, a game played with a rubber ball against high stone walls which at times could result in decapitation. This the guide described as if he had witnessed the crucifixion, and what's more, the crucifixion still in progress, which his guests, American tourists, Japanese tourists, German tourists, students from Mexico City, would also soon witness. Isandorno had seen no crucifixion or beheading, only the great ball court and the great Zikal Kolihuqui, and when he made his way around the blue temple and pyramid of niches, He felt like he had witnessed nothing at all, even if he believed the students were wrong, when Isandorno left them in the midst of pointing out to the guide that there were no dead and no thunder, only rain. There was not even a rubber ball, though one of the students had started to kick around a football and was told not to by an official before the student was kicked out of the park. But a planned stop was not the only reason why Isandorno had gotten off the bus. The feeling was strange. It came upon him without a name. He must have known it once. He was not the first man to feel his mouth dry, nor the first to note the way a heart can race without a reason. Maybe that was why he had wanted to climb a pyramid. Maybe he had wanted to justify the pulse. Only when the official told him he would have to go to Cancun to climb a pyramid did his heart slow and the dryness in his mouth evaporate, and whatever happens to his eyes in these situations told the official to look down and back away and find instead some children to order around. Isandorno had considered then his body's behavior in the same curious way he might consider a sick animal or any of those the mayor sends him to see. What does it matter if there are 35 in Boca del Rio by Manuel Avila Camacho Boulevard, or twice that in Tamaulipas near San Fernando, or just one, Mauro Tello Quinones, a brigadier general? Isandorno might as well have never been there, and if he ever passed through Uruapan, he might as well have been bowling on the black and white floor of Sol y Sombra. Isandorno doesn't bowl, and he has never been to Uruapan. Cancun has less to do with men than it has to do with tiny green turtles, and green eggs too, which she'd cook for him most mornings from the Arahuacans he'd feed every evening, when she would tell him stories about where he was not from and where he could never go, and all the things he must do if he did not want to go sooner, such as spitting 3 times over his shoulder if the sun should ever hit his eye directly, or never stepping directly on the edge of a shadow, or the number 9 he should never say unless he taps out 9 by fingers to thumb, or the silver no bullet should be without, or the gold no bullet should be without, and the kapok tree to where he had gone with her coat and a shovel after she had died, and where he had watched butterflies fall from the sky, long before he had met the mayor. Many are born into circumstances promising a long life and are surprised when death comes early. But what of those born into circumstances promising a short life who are not surprised when death does not come at all? After Isandorno left the park, he had walked and walked until his heart beat faster and his breath came out in long, warm surges. He treated his dry mouth with rainwater, and even if there was little sun, he spit over his shoulder 3 times, and even if it was too great a step on the edge of a shadow, he tugged on a earlobe whenever the clouds shifted, and then he even said 9 and tapped 9 out by fingers to thumb. And still he believed none of it. It was not even 12, and Isandorno did not have to arrive in Veracruz until much later. The 3 crates arriving this afternoon would likely be late. He would have to wait somewhere. Isandorno did not mind waiting. In fact, he liked waiting. He was good at it. At the stand, with its little trailer and a shed in the back with a barrel of water strapped to the roof, the old woman had told him that if he waited under their canopy, he could dry himself until a local bus came by to take him to Papantla. They would even make him some food for a small price. Isandorno accepted their invitation and stretched out on their bench with his long legs crossed and his thumbs hooked on his buckle, while they continued to prepare food at the large round table set with their bowls of cornmeal and buttered pans and plates heaped with sage and salt, their hands light with the coarse flour, while behind them 2 grills occasionally burst forth with smoke for no obvious reason, and then dissipated just as quickly, again for no obvious reason. And though he closed his eyes, Isandorno did not dream unless a dream could be called taking in the sound of the rain and letting it wash away everything else but the rain. And then the rain fell harder and washed even itself away. Most of the old woman started when he woke. Some shivered despite the heat in the day, sticky even in rain. And then they returned to working the dough with the heels of their hands, and though they still heeded him, they no longer looked at him, keeping to their huddle around the table while chattering against the storm. The one they called Maria Estancia, perhaps too afraid not to say anything, let alone not to note his watchfulness, came over then and offered to read his fortune. She had taken her time with the cards and had discovered nothing new or dangerous, but he had still paid her enough to make the other woman work harder in their preparations and forget their doubts. The mayor had taught him that. Money murders doubt. Only once had she stopped, fearing perhaps to cause offense. You come from a long line of... You are... Isandorno had waited for her to finish. She was good enough to know better. Your belt buckle is a horseshoe, she had said instead. Why is it upside down? Because I am unlucky, he had answered. Always on the cusp of things, she had concluded with a smile. Whatever life had led her here had also given her more than a handful of pleasures. You were on the cusp of love, she continued. On the cusp of friendship, professional concerns, even living. You are only on the cusp of life, but you are also only on the cusp of death. Never more. Always just on the edge. If you have not died already, you will live forever. But Isandorno had died, many times. Forever did not concern him. He is a stem, a husk, barren and thin, withered by sun, erased by wind, emptied by seasons of dullness, marked by seconds of duty, scarred by regrets only the faintest of lines dare to write out, which no one, not even him, can interpret anymore. People have told him a crow will reveal more than anything his face has to share. It is true his gun has a name and a caliber and even a number of shells, and the name and the caliber and the number of shells can all be told, as can their composition and their quality and even their history. But Isandorno could not care less about what is interpreted or told, and even though the points mix 1 drop of gold with 1 drop of silver, Isandorno could not care less about those habits either. He was a practitioner of superstition without being superstitious. Nor did Isandorno favor a particular weapon. He has had many guns. He will have many more. They are all only shadows of the gun he keeps within. That gun is his name, and its caliber is his caliber, and its shells number the moments left he gives others to live. Isandorno needs to know only this: there is nothing on the face of this world that a gun cannot kill. Isandorno leaves the road and approaches the Indian's stand. He can feel the old woman's eyes on his back. The old Indian doesn't stop laughing, but when he retreats into his shack and Isandorno follows him, the old Indian's eyes actually brighten. The woman seated on the ground behind the stand doesn't know enough to retreat, let alone stop laughing. She is too drunk to do anything she is aware of doing. What's that on her face? Leave her alone, the old Indian smiles. She's just an old whore. It's crocodile shit. Isandorno nods, observing the woman awaken to some new recognition, at first revealing offense, then sending her out into the rain and down the road. The old Indian resumes laughing. Look what you did! She is not the only one who tries to escape. There is a child in back, likely the old Indian's daughter. Her eyes flee the moment Isandorno spots her. Sores cover her body. Her chest is a fragile cage wrapped in wounds. Her cheeks and the backs of her arms drool with disease, but she fears Isandorno more than she fears her disease. The old Indian laughs harder. His mouth makes the card reader's mouth seem a vault of ivory. Dark pegs gnash at nonsense. Brujo, the old Indian finally grunts as if that might hold anything or stop anything or even know it. On the warped planks laid flat across fruit crates wait dozens of wooden dancers in wooden masks and small wooden llamas. Wingless birds with long, sharp beaks perch on pyramids beside boxy rings crowded by necklaces made of still darker wood, knotted with the shine of injury. But this is not what the old Indian offers Isandorno. Like the necklaces and the wingless bird, this too was carved out of bloodwood. Afterward, it was blackened by fire, soaked in animal fat, then polished with sand, rags, and later, beeswax. Mexica, the old Indian says then, finishing what the card reader feared to say. Isandorno holds up the totem. Wide mouth, long fangs, narrow eyes, ears pinned back with whiskers, which, like everything else, have been hacked out with a machete. The old Indian produced it from folds of greasy newspapers. Old notas rojas, or not so old. This is something Americans will buy with a single slip of paper. And maybe not even that. Maybe just coin. 1 dirty peso. Then they will take the head and throw away the greasy paper, and not much later they will throw away the head too. Just the same, Isandorno sees in this offering everything he cannot tame. That feeling beyond a name, let alone a shape. And as sure as the weapon that he is within himself, if what he weighed nothing, if what he aimed at was aimed at nowhere, Isandorno understands how this moment chambers around already lived out to the sound of a flat, impossible click, without consequence, let alone announcement, let alone charge. So Isandorno removes from his pocket all the money he has and pushes it toward the old Indian. It is enough money to keep him alive for years. It is enough money to keep many men like him alive for years, and with enough extra to take his daughter to a doctor and pay for her medicine, so she too can live on for many years. But the old Indian just flashes his dark gums and shakes his head, even as somewhere out in the back his daughter starts to whimper. The carving cost 20 pesos, but what hunts you now, amigo, you already own. El Tajín, Mexico, May 10th, 2014, 3:14:31 p.m.